morning, wonderful Janice Muir. Thank you for being our guest for our Everyday Heroes podcast. You and I met about 14 years ago, and ever since then, I have vicariously followed your work through social and just been in awe of the changes that have happened in your life. Janice is a wonderful online entrepreneur and a coach to authors. After 33 years in the public sector, she decided that life was too short. She was retrenched, and this is a lady who has gone through, so many challenges in her life, losing a partner to dementia in 2002, and then in 2006 herself being diagnosed with cervical and then with breast cancer and having to go through all of that. Janice, there's a saying that life begins at 50. You absolutely epitomized that for me. And I know that right now, you've not just set up your online business and also a book writing service, and yet you got 6 books in the offing. Super excited. I just finished reading your book yesterday. I just want to firstly thank you for making time to join us in this call. I know that our listeners out there, I've got so many wonderful friends and family and people that I've come across who have gone through cancer and are going through it right now. And I just feel that they would get so much wisdom from your amazing experience, because I believe that just recently you were marked off 15 years clear and going stronger than ever.
Totally. It was, it's a good feeling. It's like the next 15 years is what I'm aiming for.
Wow, fantastic. Well, Janice, when I read through your book, it was such a great read. I felt it was so raw. It was direct. It was straightforward. You went into a place of having to revisit much of your journey. In fact, I imagine that couldn't have been easy for you. And at the same time, I left overall feeling totally uplifted. Tell me, what was it that sparked your interest in putting that book together, knowing how potentially painful that experience could have been for you?
Good question. And yes, I didn't want to do it to start off with, in all honesty. What I wanted to do was actually write to inspire the teenager. And whilst I have a book out around that, I got challenged by the mentor that I had at the time, who said, tell them your gutsy story. And I'm thinking, no, they don't want to hear. And little did the mentor know at that time, I had a lot of, I don't want to call it abuse, but it's a form of verbal abuse from my mother in particular, telling me that I didn't have a story to share. I wasn't that important. So, I was challenged by go out there and do it. And then, this other chatter happening. And then there was a point where I did the work and I parked the book for 3 years.
Wow.
Before I actually came back and said, we're doing this, and put it all together.
Amazing. And really, I felt it was so sincere. There was so much detail into the exact emotions that you went through when you first heard the news and having to go through all those decisions. And anyway, I really do want to encourage everyone to pick up that book. It's called Let Me Get This Off My Chest. And I want to thank you for your courage in putting that together for the wonderful people out there that absolutely need to hear your story.
Thank you, Dominic. I really appreciate that. I've been getting a few little comments from those that have already bought it saying, I can't put it down.
I read it in like 3 sittings. I'll attest to that. I absolutely couldn't put it down.
Wow, I'm surprised, because when you're pouring your heart out, when you're pouring the evidence of what you've actually experienced, you don't realize what the impact is onto the other person, because you're already in it.
Yes.
So it's humbling when people share. I couldn't put it down.
Well, certainly, for many of us, we go through all sorts of challenges in life, but compared to what you have been through, one of the messages we give to all our listeners is that there's a hero in every one of us. And that's really the reason why we really wanted to put this podcast together. And and I'm so glad that you put your story together, because every one of us has a story, don't we?
We do. Well, look, the beautiful thing is we have to go through that part of the journey that becomes our story. However, if we do not face that story, we do not necessarily heal from that story. And that is the biggest lesson and takeaway that I have gained from it. With my upcoming book, Writing the Journey Around Alzheimer's Dementia, that in itself is another depth of healing, right? And my partner's been gone nearly 20 years.
Wow.
So, it's been a long time in the making, but the work for that was also done around the same time as doing the breast cancer book, but I just gave the breast cancer book more energy to start off with. But the actual Alzheimer's journey is 3/4 written. I just need a really hard edit.
Wonderful, wonderful. And that is such a wonderful service to the world because, so often we focus on the people that go through it, and my heart goes out to everyone who's going through that moment. I've never ever, I guess I'm blessed that I've never had to go through that. I can only imagine how frightening it must have been just to hear the news. And I know that you were so courageous because you literally had to go through it whilst you had some dear friends and family that supported you. You pretty much did it all alone, and that would have been so challenging. And also, very often we forget about those who are carers and what they need to go through. And I think you have such a powerful message for those people, a message of resilience for them too, about what to do, what to say, how to best be present to support others. And I think that is such a wonderful such an important and wonderful message. I really honor you for your work.
Thank you. And if I may add to that there, Dominic, the situation when you're dealing with something by yourself is you really do find out of those that genuinely care. And sometimes your bloodline is not necessarily your biggest supporter.
Yes.
Because my two biggest supporters were actually outside of the bloodline and did more, i.e. what I've witnessed, in the book, the support, the courage that they stood by me, making certain I was on time for appointments. I mean, you really do find out who your true friends are and your true people that that will be your support and your encouragement.
Wonderful. How important would you say your support group was to you in your recovery process, Janice, and going through it? And at that time, probably you wouldn't know if you recovered. I just read with the amazing faith that you had and that positivity you had to create for yourself each and every day. But how important would you say that the support people were in your life?
Look, because I only basically had two people that I really could rely on. I did have a family member who I would often ring and say, can you come? She would no sooner arrive than she was being called back home again. So that was no support whatsoever. It was a case of just go, don't worry. But I did have a girlfriend that came in and helped cook some meals with me. And that was a bonus because there was only 2 weeks out of 3 that were actually, I could do anything with, because the third week being not so much the end week, but the first week was, it was total bedridden for me. I wasn't able to get out. So the actual importance of having support is huge when you know what you're facing. And it's interesting from the work colleagues, because I was in the public service at the time. Yeah, we're there for you, we're here for you. But I never heard from anyone in the office. One man that I had befriended in the office, he rang me on odd occasions outside of office hours. And he did some naughty things which he should not have done, but he picked me up in cars that were absolutely identified to make certain I got home. So after treatment, I didn't have anybody to get home, and it was anything up to 3 hours journey from the hospital in the local bus. By the time he'd done all his placing around, it was pointless. I needed to be home within the hour because I needed rest straight away. So your support group is crucial. You just don't know who they're going to be until the circumstances occurs.
Janice, how has cancer changed you? Your cancer experience. Without going through the entire book, but just in summary, maybe the top 3 things. How has cancer changed you?
Well, it's made me take a darn good look at my life. It's actually made me appreciate where I was in life and what I was doing, I didn't realize at the time it was the emotion that I was carrying that was causing the dis-ease to create disease, right? So that was a big change. Oh my Lord, you know, all of this stuff I'm carrying, that's not good for anybody, right? The other thing about change was I actually had to step into who I am. You know, I couldn't hide behind this little wall anymore, buffer, you know, push out, pull back, push out, pull back, when now I'm in a place where I'm going for this. There is no stopping me. You know, one of the most beautiful things from a lovely lady who, shall I say, had already walked the cancer walk, and she was somebody in the hospital that I met. She took me abseiling within probably 4 weeks of being cleared of the chemo, because I mean your physical body has to rejuvenate again. But she took me abseiling to say, if you can beat cancer, you can abseil.
Wow.
You know, so from that perspective, I achieved more than I realised I was ever going to achieve.
Wow.
Does that make sense? Like, I mean,
Absolutely,
it's a case of,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, I was pushed to the limit of surviving. I was pushed to the limit of managing on my own. But when the girlfriend took me and said, we're going abseiling, I said, what? You can beat cancer, Jan, then you can do abseiling. And you know what? I'd do it again tomorrow. Abseiling was absolutely exhilarating for me. And yeah, a tipping point of change.
Beautiful, beautiful. It seems like the whole event has really pushed you to live life to the absolute fullest. I mean, it's almost a cliche. You read about these things and you say, hey, you got those life-changing moments. And yet, from what I can tell, you know, reading your book and learning about your experiences, life has truly never been the same again. In many ways, for the positive, you know, you've not just survived it, but you're using that opportunity, the lessons from it to thrive and truly be alive. And I really, really honor you for that, Janice.
And look, I'll add to that as well. I've always been a very positive person. I've always been very vibrant and, you know, I'm out there. I'm probably in your face at times, but, you know, get used to it. That's me. But I do it with love. I do it with caring. I do it with empathy, right? But the thing that really probably pushed me was I'd been to a seminar just weeks before being diagnosed, and I'd bought this gentleman's content, of which I was able to listen to. And what this gentleman had been through had been an aeroplane crash. He was told he may never walk again, and he walked out of that hospital 3 months after the operation that the doctor said could never happen. Wow. Should never have happened. So I was already inspired to, once I got over my own fear, right, once I got out of that vortex of where I was going, to empower myself to do things differently. And that's exactly what I have done. Really lifted myself up in a way that the journey gave me more resilience to step up, to step in, to step up, to step out.
Wonderful. Excellent. Janice, I really want to pick up on what you shared earlier. It was really fascinating for me because many people associate, you know, cancer as being brought about by lifestyle, health, the physiological elements, your diet, your sleep, and all of that stuff. And clearly that probably would have been a contributor as well as you shared in that book. But I was very interested that you mentioned that through your journey of healing, you discovered that the emotional aspects of life you felt contributed to you developing that those lumps in the first place. How did you come to that conclusion? I'm just curious.
To be honest with you, it was after the event.
Oh.
It was after the journey, because I was ignorant of the fact that I could even get cancer, right? Now, as a 12-year-old, my mother said to me at one point in time, cancer will miss her and it'll get one of us 3 children. Now, I was the only one standing in front of her. My 2 other sisters never heard the actual story. So it was very interesting when I did get cancer, because my mother's first words to me were, it should have got me and not you. You know, so I understood, although not right at the immediate time, but later on, the power of the mind and what it does absorb. From the point of the emotions, losing my partner to the disease Alzheimer's dementia was a harrowing time, because only myself and my daughter, we were both in Darwin, we had to manage that on our own. And I understand now that because of some things that happened to me as a child, I was told to sweep it under the carpet. I probably also harbored some of that, and then took that energy, because that's where my subconscious was running from, old paradigms. And I started to run my life from the point of not dealing with the emotion. You know, I had emotional moments, but I'm talking about the core elements of coping and releasing. And forgiving, for that matter. So I basically just did that. I swept it under the carpet. Get out, let's go and live life, you know, blah, blah, blah. Oh, hang on a minute. There's something going wrong here. And after cancer, that's when my real brainwave clicked in, because I got to understand the emotion that we carry is a factor of the dis-ease.
Yes.
Funny how we spell dis-ease. Is the creator of disease.
Right.
Now, let me just add to that. If we go back a few years, during the time of coping with my partner, I ate a huge amount of acidic foods. Huge amount of acidic foods. You know, the potatoes, things that were quick fillers. They filled me up. I was working 3 jobs at one point in time. You know, to survive, to keep myself occupied. And the bottom line is, I now understand that all of that acidic food was also a impact on what the body was doing. And it wasn't until getting cancer, what an awakening that was. I had to start changing my whole way of looking at food and the impact of what food does. And today I still am very mindful of how much acidic food I've had to how much alkaline food. I only drink alkaline water now. I do not drink any water that is acidic.
Wow, fantastic. So sounds like you've had to achieve a fairly significant transformation in your life. It certainly transformed your life in many ways. Your lifestyle today is, would you say, is so much different to what it was like before?
I'm going to say, yes, it is different because I'm in a completely different environment, but I'm going to say it is also more empowered and it's also more improved.
Right.
You know, I still have my problems. We all have a weight factor. We all have different aspects in the way that, you know, the body absorbs food and everything. I still love my chocolate.
Don't we all?
But we've got to be able to balance it, because if I have a chocolate day, I like those days. If we have a chocolate day, I've really got to balance it on the alkaline side the next day. Because if you have more chocolate, well, you're going to the acidic side. The bottom line is the average person does not know cancer can only live in an acidic body.
All right. Wonderful. So many gems there, Jen, and I'd just like to unpack that a little bit just to give our listeners perhaps even more tips on that. And you know, one of the hardest things we teach in emotional intelligence is about learning and being aware of your emotions, not ignoring them, addressing them, and being vulnerable, being prepared to be vulnerable. So you seem to have gone through a process where you had to revisit very painful moments that you had, as you said, been swept under the rug. Share with us maybe what are 1-2 tips you could give to our listeners. What's the process you went through? Did you have the help of a therapist, a counselor, a coach? I understand that you also went through and you kept your mind open about some alternative therapies beyond the contemporary medicine. And there was Reiki, I think you mentioned in your book. That also sparked my curiosity. I've had some exposure to that, but not a whole lot. Maybe you can tell us about maybe 1, 2, 3 tips on how people can go through and get support in that area of their life, addressing the emotional aspects.
Well, to start off with, I'm going to say, take the lid off the box. Right? We get bombarded with so much stuff about the medical, you know, the pharmaceuticals, all of that area that we've got to be paying money to them. But we really need to sit and listen and ask our body, What is the next thing that I need to do to move me forward, take me out of this place, shift my thinking, anything around that area that actually gives you insight. And when we sit still and we allow that to filter through us, we can make a better decision. So I think for me, I was in a very fortunate spot that I had that understanding, right? So it's being able to be mindful, reading, reading things around Wayne Dwyer, getting understanding and clarity. I follow Bob Proctor very, very closely during my time at convalescing in cancer. Oh, don't want to say that anymore. But the bottom line is I kept myself inspired. So from that perspective, I also started writing out in a form of a journal what was happening, how it was happening, what it made me feel. One of the biggest things that we could do when we're going through a trauma, when we're going through time to try and bring ourselves to that other side, is ask ourselves a better question. Not how did this happen to me? Oh, why is it happening to me? What was the thing that I did that caused this to happen? Where was I and what was happening that had this impact on me? Most people will always go, how come me? Well, I've never said, why me?
Beautiful.
So being mindful, to be open to ask questions of ourselves, to be able to move through it. The answers all come from within.
Right. Wonderful. Beautiful. And you make a lot of mention of that in your book, listen to your intuitive voice, which is so beautiful. And, what you've been through resonates so much about all the things that we teach in resilience. Firstly, be proactive. Don't wait for someone else to do it for you. You got to take charge. No one's going to make it even better. Yes, and you absolutely epitomize that. Sure, you had support of wonderful people around you, and yet mostly you knew that if you had to get through this and not just get through but thrive on the other side, you had to do it, right? And it started off with also then being open-minded about possibilities, staying calm, listening to the inner voice. Clearly, contemporary medicine would have made a massive difference. I think you went through 2 bouts of chemotherapy and obviously the mastectomy, and that was a tough decision. And clearly those things would have contributed to you being so well today. And yet you were also keeping an open mind on what else is out there. Who else has recovered from this and is living an even better life? Let me be open-minded and explore that. That clearly came through in your story.
Correct. And let me just add to that. One of the things that I contradicted the doctor with.
Tell me more.
And I didn't put this in the book, so those that hear it from here. But I actually, my daughter and myself were, of course, at the first oncologist meeting. And my daughter particularly spoke up and said, what if mum takes different medications, not as in medications of the doctor's format, but the naturopathic format? What will that, will that be a hindrance to her? And basically the oncologist said, waste of money. You'll be wasting your time. Well, do you want to know something? As patronising and all as it was at the time, the oncologist, nearly my very last consultation, patted me on the head and said, you've been a very good girl. You've survived this better than others. Now, what I did was I went to my nutritionist who understood cancer. That was a bonus. He'd already worked in CSIRO, so he understood the mechanisms of what bringing chemo was all about. And what I did that the hospital were floored with is I asked the hospital to provide me with all of the chemo literature and how it all came together. And they said, why would you want that? I said, that's for me to know and you to wonder. And I took it to my nutritionist who understood the terminology of it all. And because he understood it, we counterbalance it with extra vitamins and minerals right from day one.
Right.
He read my blood every 3 weeks to identify what the chemo was doing. And trust me, my blood cells at some point in time looked like a sausage dog.
Wow.
And I was not in a place of no energy in me. I was moving, but I was slow. You know, it was an effort to do anything. The impact of what the chemo was doing. But the bottom line was what the naturopathy guy was doing. He was able to analyze all of that, and we worked out what we needed to add in the vitamins to bring it back the other way. So, of course, by week 3, when you're going back into the next week's dosage, you know, you're bouncing off the walls.
Yes.
And all of the nurses in the chemo ward say, we don't get patients coming in like this. They all come in humdrum, low. Well, you know, I'm different. I was proactive, if that's the right way to put it, very proactive. Once I accepted where the journey was, and I was very fortunate that a few people came forth and said, go here, go here, go here, which all turned out to be the same naturopath. And it cost me a bit of money, but it was the best outcome for me.
Fantastic. So it sounds like the doctors were, with all their heart and expertise, were looking to save your life. And yet you had this realization that, for me, the key is, why are my cells, decaying or being destructive in the very first place? What can I learn to do to rejuvenate those cells and bring them alive again? And I read that you had...
Scary.
It's scary, I bet. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
When you see your blood all jammed together and it's looked like a long sausage dog, and each line is, I'm sorry, I just don't have that picture anymore, because that would have gone in the book. But the bottom line is, that's the impact of, is that what's happening on the inside? Wow. Because I learned so much about how much our blood can tell us what is on the inside that we cannot see from the outside. So it's a great colloidal spirit that is running through us, using the blood as the mechanism.
Yes.
That when they draw it out, what they can see in it. So I learned so much about that aspect going through this journey. So, the passion to only want to be in an alkaline body, wow, that's just number one for me.
Beautiful. Well done. Well done. And it sounds like you've got a super exciting year ahead. Tell me, what will make the next 12 months amazing for Janice? I know that you've got a lot in store, and I want to get to how you can help other people out there even more, because that seems to be what you're doing with the rest, with this next phase of your journey. What will make the next 12 months amazing for you?
The next 12 months, I'm looking for a massive change in me. Not just me, myself, but in the way in which I share the message out there. The journey itself gives you lots of trinkets of little ideas and hints and tips of what you could change. And what it is grabbing hold of them and being able to bring them out through you.
Yes.
Because everything that I need comes from within. So it's stepping out on stage and, sharing the message. It's stepping out on stage and encouraging people. You've got to find the story within to heal. Yesterday I heard something that was quite bizarre, but it really, I really relate to it. The word history. We say hi to story. So, that's really stuck with me as a way to say, hi, story, let's get you through me, to me, about me, to be able to share whatever that is for you. Because like you said earlier, everybody has a story, but it's through the writing of the story that we will heal.
Wonderful.
All right? It's fascinating. The other side of the coin is, I've also come to understand that people that want to write a book or want to share their story in some way, they are sitting in what is known as disorganized knowledge.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So to get to organized knowledge so that you have the book in your hand, you have to get to organized knowledge. And, I've created 5 steps to be able to help people to go through that so that they do hold their book in their hand.
Yes.
because from disorganized knowledge is the only way up, and we heal through that to become organized knowledge.
Wonderful. I just love, when I was reading through your profile and truly understood even more why you do what you do. You speak about healing through writing, and that is such a beautiful thing. And so what you essentially do is help aspiring authors who have a story in them and maybe even discover what that story could be and bring that about, and you help them with the organizational aspects so that their vision and dream become a reality through the services and your coaching and guiding and mentoring. Is that right?
Correct.
Wonderful.
Look, to be able to do that, sometimes we have to look at the mirror. We have to look at the mirror.
Yes.
Because the mirror tells us where the timeline is. The journeys, the segments, the situations, the outcomes, the pain, the suffering.
Wow.
And when you face that by asking specific questions at that point in time, of which I've divided 60 of them, to be able to ask yourself what was happening, where was I, who was around me, and what was the outcome of that. So where did that lead me to? Oh dear, X, Y, Z, P, Q, and R, and A, B, C, right? You're now in the thick of whatever that pain is. Then to be able to say, well, how did I deal with this? What was my learnings? What can my message be? Sometimes the idea of a book and title comes up at that time, because from there you're in the thick of the pain. So we need to take you to that next stage of what were the outcomes that you learned from this.
Beautiful.
What were the highs and lows, the little lessons that got you through? And then when we come to the conclusion side of it, well, then of course it's being able to wrap that all up with some form of a message.
Nice.
And know that you, from point A to point C, we have to go up to B and get over the pinnacle, right? To be able to get over the hump, to come down again, and life starts again. It's a journey.
Great. Wonderful. And what a awesome guide. If there's a Sherpa that I'd love to take to the top of my Everest, well, here's a wonderful Sherpa who's been there, done that, and doing it. And suddenly, climbs are so much easier when you have someone who's been there and done that and can talk to us about all our blind spots. So I think you're offering a wonderful service and helping people bring their story alive, because I truly believe there's a story in each and every one of us. And
Totally.
Certainly my personal journey as an author has been incredibly helpful and stimulated me to want to do even more. Janice, tell our wonderful listeners, how could they reach you and stay connected with your work, Janice? I see your wonderful background.
Well, I've actually got my little name up there. I'm not quite sure if you can see it, but primarily it's janicemuir.com.
Nice.
And on there will be information about me, information about writing, information about the journey itself. And then I'm in the throes at the moment, whilst the site is live. If you can't get in, it's because I'm in there working in it. So I'm doing about 4 platforms that I'm offering. One of them is called the Words Package, which will only just help you to get started. Then we call it the Healing Package. That'll take you just that step deeper to start probing yourself with questions. Then I call it the Power Package. The Power Package is when you have to start looking at your timeline. And you need to get your timeline in order first to be able to get your story into momentum. And let me just say at this point in time, I'm not somebody that is a writer that writes about fantasies and science fictions or anything. I write about the true essence of who you are as the person. And that's the only place that I come from, because it's your journey to be able to heal your pain, your suffering. We need to heal it through writing it out. Wow. So from the power area, once we've got the timeline all sorted, we can then go and basically look at what our chapters are. From there, we go to one-on-one, is what I'm calling the 4th package, where we go deeper to say, well, if you're ready to write this book, we now need to go into another levels. And it's a journey. A book is not written overnight. You can contest to that one.
No.
It is a time factor, so you have to allow yourself time. So janicemuir.com. If you're wanting any information about my books, it's just books.janicemuir.com. And yeah, by all means, I'm on Facebook. You can find me there. I'm on LinkedIn, not as active, but I've got to improve in that area. But by all means, reach out to me on Facebook or in a message on the actual website.
Brilliant. Janice, it's been an enlightening morning for me, and I want to thank you for making time to be so vulnerable and share of your story and with your generosity of spirit. I just absolutely love your energy, and I think that the world is your oyster. And do continue to spread your love and magic. I look forward to collaborating with you even more. And look forward to, if you're up to it, maybe being a guest in our podcast again 1 year or 2 years from now. Love to keep in touch and keep track of how you're going, and keep being the wonderful inspiration you are, Janice.
Thank you, and I will.